Hi everyone, how's it going? That was terrible. Today I'm going to take you on a little tour around RSPB Minsmere in Suffolk, but first let's have a look at what I saw this morning before coming to Minsmere. My day started when I travelled 35 miles southeast from my home in Norwich to Westleton Heath in Suffolk just after sunrise. This is a bit of an annual migration for me, and for the past 5 years I've been lucky enough to see red deer there. These are the UK's largest land mammals, and the part of the heath where I visited is where they gather for their yearly rut. It was quite breezy and cold, and most of the animals were out of sight or inactive, but I did spot this stag with a strangely lopsided set of antlers, and I saw these two youngsters having a bit of a tussle. With fully grown stags, these fights can be very serious. Sometimes they'll even fight to the death. But these weren't real contenders, and I think they were probably practicing for the years to come. There was a fully grown stag out on the heath as well, but he seemed to be preoccupied eating, so I left him to it and travelled a couple of miles further southeast to RSPB Minsmere. I was trying to convince the person in reception that I was an actual paid member and that I'd just lost my card. I filmed this blue tit feeding on some sunflower seeds, and on the ground below this male chaffinch. Unfortunately he, like a lot of chaffinches these days, is suffering from fringilla papillomavirus, which causes warty-like growths on the bird's legs and feet. With my membership confirmed, I headed into the reserve proper, and it wasn't very long before I saw my first bit of wildlife. A common toad was on the road. Okay, it was on the path, but that doesn't rhyme and I'm in a poetic mood. At under an inch long, this is probably a 1-year-old, and here it is proving the saying that toads crawl and frogs hop is not always true. I made sure it got to safety, and I carried on to the first of many hides, North Hyde. This hide has 2 floors, and from the upper layer I had quite good views across a wetland scrape. There are several different species of birds spread across the area, including this flock of widgeon. Around 450,000 of these birds overwinter in the UK, but they only breed here sparsely and in low numbers, with the Suffolk coast being one of the places they do so. I could also see a solo moorhen, with its constantly flicking tail, and this grey heron stalking through an area of cut reeds. These are the largest member of the heron family in the country, with a wingspan of up to 2 metres. However, they are not the only member of the heron family at Minsmere, as you'll see later in this video. Despite their size, herons are really light, only growing to about 1 kilo in weight. There was another familiar sight out on the scrape as well, a couple of Eurasian magpies. These highly intelligent members of the crow family are very adaptable and can no doubt find lots of food in this rich habitat. I moved on from the hide and continued around the reserve before coming to a clearing where in previous years the grass had been heavily grazed, but on this visit it had grown high and gone to seed. The local goldfinches were taking full advantage of this, with a charm of maybe more than 100 dipping in and out of the tall grass. It wasn't far from here until the reserve paths made way for a shingle beach and the North Sea. I couldn't resist dipping my wellies and trying to film some cinematic shots of the waves. Well, not exactly successful, but at least I tried. Further along the coast, on a more sandy stretch, several small birds were flitting in and out of the dunes and brambles. Stonechats. This one's a male, and here is a female. They get their name from their clicking call, which sounds like 2 stones being hit together. And here's a male and a female side by side. Notice how the male has a darker head and more orange coloured breast than his female counterpart. Among a dense piece of vegetation, I noticed a different bird moving about, one I've only seen once before, a Dartford warbler. I know this isn't the best view that you've ever had of a bird, but thousands of people travel to Minsmere every year just hoping to see one, so I wanted to show you how lucky I'd got. It soon disappeared among the shrubbery, and after a quick look at this hovering male kestrel, who was managing to keep his head still despite the strong coastal breeze, I continued down the path and turned back away from the sea and into the reserve once more. After a short walk, I arrived at the second hide, viewing the same scrape as earlier but from the other side. Close in was this rather unassuming wader, a ruff. Although this individual isn't very colourful, during the spring and summer a lot of the males of this species develop large plumes of colourful feathers around their heads and necks that they use to show off to the females. I could also see some widgeon from here too. Notice how the male in the middle still has his summer plumage of a chestnut coloured head and a yellow to gold coloured cap. Compared to previous visits to Minsmere, it was quite quiet out on the scrape, and then I heard some excitement from someone else in the hide. It was over this small bird on the very far bank, a little stint. Less than 800 of these pass through the UK every year, and at the size of a house sparrow, it wasn't the easiest thing to film at about half a mile away. I moved on to the next hide, which wasn't very far but gave a slightly different viewpoint. In the distance there was the same flock of widgeon, but between me and them there was another bird, a lapwing. These were also known as peewits because of their strange sounding calls, and this is replicated in other European languages. In German they are known as kiebitz, and in Norwegian they are called VP. On a patch of wet mud nearer to the hide was this wood pigeon. I have a real soft spot for these and their city relatives, the feral pigeons. I think it's because I see them all of the time and they seem to have such personalities. From here, the path took me through a small woodland and towards the reception area where this crimson speckled moth was pointed out to me on a fence. At around an inch in length, it was attracting quite a bit of attention. Less than 100 of these have been seen in the UK in the 100 years up to 2022, although a lot more have been seen this year. So I've been about halfway around the reserve now and seen some cool things, including that moth and quite a few different types of bird. But now I'm going to head to a hide called Bittern Hide, where a few people have told me they've seen bitterns today, and fingers crossed I will see one as well, and if I do, I will show it to you shortly. Bittern Hide is a tower 3 stories high, and as such it gives amazing views across some of Minsmere's reed beds. Almost straight away this marsh harrier came into view. Look how it flies low over the reeds, holding its wings in the shallow V shape for which they are known, occasionally slowing to look for prey below. The reeds provide a great habitat for lots of interesting species, but when they are so dense it isn't easy to spot them. Luckily, this kingfisher announced its arrival with a flash of turquoise blue and landed in one of the only places where I could have actually seen it. I don't know if it was properly hunting or just practicing, as it didn't seem to be taking it very seriously. After a few dives and no success, it flew up before dipping back into the reed beds out of sight. Well, unfortunately no bitterns in that hide, but there's one more where I might see them, Island Mere. If not, maybe some bearded tits. And if I don't see any of them things, it doesn't matter, because after that it's back to the heath, where hopefully I'll see some more red deer. The hide at Island Mere was quite busy, but after finding a space and scanning the scenery, I noticed a bird skulking at the water's edge. This is a great white egret, a relatively recent coloniser of the UK. They're almost as big as a grey heron, with a wingspan of up to 1.8 metres, and they first started breeding in this country in 2012. There were plenty of other birds out on the water itself, including several species of gull and loads of great cormorants. Although some of them seemed to be fishing or taking a bath, most were stood around drying their feathers and probably getting ready to roost on the safety of the pool's rocks and wooden features. Whilst I filmed them, someone pointed out that the egret had made a catch, but by the time I got my camera pointing in the right direction, it was just swallowing its prey. If you watch closely here, you can see that the fish is still moving as it goes down the bird's throat. And here it is again in slow motion. With its orange fins and silver body, this fish is, or rather was, a fairly large roach. This would have filled the egret up for quite a while. With the light beginning to fade, I left Island Mere and made my way back northwest to Westleton Heath. Upon my arrival, a lot of the deer were in sight, but quite far away, and clearly they had been startled by something. They don't have any natural predators in this country, so I suspect it was people that had disturbed them. And then, as they were running behind some vegetation, I noticed something else on the heath. Tragedy struck. Just after I saw them red deer, somebody pointed out a small flock of stone curlews, which I've never seen, let alone filmed before. But just as I pointed the camera towards them, batteries died. So I've just ran back to the car, got a fresh set of batteries, and hopefully by the time I get back they're still there, and that little UV ball of fire behind me doesn't duck behind the horizon. Let's get a move on. Despite delaying to film this B-roll, I was happy to see that the stone curlews were still there when I got back. These crow-sized birds have very large yellow eyes, and although they didn't seem to be up to much whilst I was filming them, that's for a good reason. They are mostly active after dark when they use their excellent vision to scour the ground for beetles, worms and other small creatures to eat. Despite the earlier chaos, some of the red deer had begun to re-emerge from the vegetation, but they were still very far away and I was losing light fast. I could just make out the tips of a stag's antlers above some shrubs, and he chose his moment to emerge, just as I was letting a family look through my camera. Well, that's nature for you. At least there will probably be deer for me to see there in future years. And on that note, the sun's gone down too far for my camera to work anymore, but what a brilliant way to end the day. If you enjoyed this video, check out this other British wildlife video, and if you like that, subscribe for more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.